Welcome to this year's New Year, New Outlook. The software-defined car needs new models for success. It is my pleasure to have a fantastic panel in front of us today for the next hour, and we hope that you engage with us using the Q&A box on your screen. This is where you can ask our panelists all of your biggest questions. So make sure to ask questions throughout today's discussion, and we'll get around to a dedicated Q&A part at the end of today's webinar. Secondly, we will also be showcasing some polls throughout the next hour. So please make sure to vote, engage, as this will provide some great insights and data that you can take a look at from your industry peers. So without further ado, I would like to pass over to Roger Langto. Roger, fantastic to have you involved today as the Director of Automotive Connected Mobility, Global Automotive Practice for Strategy Analytics. Over to you, Roger.
Thank you very much, Haley, and hello, everybody. There are many hot topics today in the industry. Today, we're focusing on one of the hottest, which is the software-defined car. Sal, you can advance that slide. And how about one more? There we go. This is the kind of world we're looking at in the future, where we're trying to figure out how to send appropriate contextualized information to drivers to enhance the safety of driving, basically, but as well as to enrich the driving experience. So we're looking at content management, location insights, traffic, weather, and parking, the driver's social graph, communications priorities, and then safety, safety, safety. So let's go one more slide. So this is a world where we're building these solutions around connectivity. Beginning this year, 1/2 of all cars manufactured in the world are coming with a built-in connection. The problem is we haven't quite sold that value proposition yet to the customer, so we're still trying to charge a subscription, and then these connections become neglected unless we just give it away. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today, how to keep those cars connected and how to deliver a rich experience to make it something really attractive that people are looking for, that they want, that they demand in their vehicle. Next slide. And what is the opportunity in that infotainment system in the center of the stack? Well, it's billions of dollars if we can get this right. And so there's a whole supply chain there implicated to deliver that value proposition in the car. Now, it looks like it's declining, but it's only declining because, advance the slide. We're also getting these cockpit domain controllers that are integrating completely the instrument cluster, the infotainment system, and the head-up display in the car to create a truly integrated experience, multiple screens with safety information, as well as content, navigation experience, weather, etc. Next slide. And we're connecting our phones in the car. So you can see the challenges are there in terms of how to manage all this information for the driver in a distraction mitigated manner. Next slide. So certainly Google has entered this game, and what you see in the dark purple at the bottom of that is the rapid adoption of the Android operating system that's coming into infotainment systems in the car. And of course, we're also getting connected Google systems. But are we going to hand over all of this to Google, or are we just going to have Google there along with the solutions that we as car makers are trying to deliver, a contextualized, personalized experience that's built around our vehicles and our brands? That is the question we're talking about today. Next slide. Now, this is a lot to digest, but the issue to bear in mind here is that it really comes down to, so this is from our survey work at Strategy Analytics that we conduct in China, North America, and Europe, asking people, what are they using in the car? What do they want in the car? What are they interested in having access to in the car? And it really boils down to traffic, weather, and parking, honestly. And we still have work to do to deliver those fully contextual, useful applications in the car that enhance the delight of driving a car as well as enhancing safety. But this is the full scope of the work we have done in looking at all the available applications. Next slide. So in the end, we're trying to meet that contextual challenge, committing adequate resources to connectivity. When we talk to suppliers, they're constantly amazed at how few executives, engineers, developers are working on these platforms today at the automakers compared to how many executives are committed to developing these same kind of solutions in mobile devices. So we have a lot of work to do, leveraging that onboard map for enhanced safety and infotainment applications, achieving appropriate personalization, i.e. being pleasing, not creepy or alienating, leveraging voice to simplify, enhance application switching, and leverage driver monitoring for credentialing and access security. So those are the challenges that we're talking about here today.
Thank you,
Take away,
Roger.
Haley.
So now we would like to introduce our first poll. So please take a look at your screen as we put on your screen now your voting opportunity. So poll question number 1. What is the number 1 challenge in delivering compelling connected IVI? You will see various options in front of you. So we're going to give you around 30 seconds to vote. We have the cost of IVI development and maintenance, the cost of connected service delivery, mobile data services, complexity of IVI development, or competency in software and UX development. So we have around 10 seconds remaining. We can see nearly 70% have voted. So we're going to give you a little bit longer. Let's get that up. That's nearly 90% have voted. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fantastic. Well, now I'm going to share the results with you all on your screen. Can you all see those results? Fantastic. Well, next up, Roger, I don't know if you have any comments to make or if those poll results.
Well, clearly the vote is in favor of complexity being the greatest challenge, but I have a feeling our next expert will have something to say about that. Sal Dinani from Telenav.
Thank you so much, Roger. Over to you, Sal.
Thank you, Haley. Thank you, Roger. That was really interesting to see the poll. Although there was a winner, there wasn't a clear winner. And it seems, based on the polling, that each of those options were problems, cost, complexity, and so on. So, which is a perfect, so thank you for setting me up, because that's a perfect lead into my talk here. My name is Sal Dinani. I am COO of Telenav. And today I'm going to talk about just that, the challenges we face as an industry in delivering a connected IVI experience that meets consumer needs and can be delivered at a manageable cost. Again, both of those were highlighted there. And then number 2 is our approach, our thoughts on how we can overcome these challenges with the right technology and the right business model, because we have to address both. So let's start with the challenges first. What are the challenges today that we have in delivering compelling IVI user experiences? The number 1 there is tied to the fact that every time we build infotainment, it is coupled with a new vehicle development, which takes a while to develop. And then once we develop it, it pretty much stays the same for the life of the vehicle. And then we move on to the next platform, the next generation of IVI, and we do the same. And so for the life of the vehicle, the experience for the consumer is pretty much the same. And if you contrast that with the consumer point of view, when they see anything digital, they're expecting it to be updated frequently, when it comes to content, daily, maybe real time. And when it comes to the software itself, on a regular basis, perhaps monthly or so on, as we're used to in mobile. But with us, of course, that's not what happens. And at the end of the day, despite years of development and effort and blood, sweat, and tears, the consumer gets an experience that's already outdated when we ship that vehicle, when they purchase that car, and then remains outdated. And this is the big reason for dissatisfaction when it comes to consumer sentiment on IVI. So how do we address these challenges, and what are they really? So at the end of the day, there are both technical challenges and new business model challenges, and we need to find a solution to both. So let's start with the technical challenge first. Number one, again, aligning with consumer expectations, the IVI must be designed for frequent updates while managing the risk of doing updates, which in automotive are, of course, much higher than when it comes to mobile or other platforms. So the first thing we have to do is make sure that we can do that safely. At Telenav, the way we've done that is by decoupling the core services with the HMI and having a modular and service-oriented architecture, where the yellow box there that you see is the HMI, and it's decoupled from the blue boxes, which are the core building blocks of the system. This way, we can update the HMI more frequently, we can improve usability, we can add new use cases using the services that are provided by the blue boxes, and continually have a fresh experience in front of the consumer without changing too much of the system. And then periodically, we change the blue boxes where the core services and features are delivered that are more complex. So we take our time to update those. And then when we do introduce those, enable even more fresh functionality. So this way, we can continually update the software in the vehicle. And then we believe that the cloud first is very important, because by simply updating the cloud, you can present that fresh perspective to the consumer, whether it is up-to-date road conditions, or in case of commerce, adding a new fast food restaurant that is part of that service, or a new parking payment service, or a new tolling service. You can continually update that and enable that functionality just through updating content. And that together then results in a more compelling experience that lasts throughout the life of the vehicle. But building such a system is expensive and costly to run over the life of the vehicle. We got that from the poll earlier as well. And that leads to the other challenge of finding a new business model to support this. So our perspective there is the new business model must do two things. Number one, it should reduce the upfront costs for the tier one and the OEMs. And number two, it should provide ongoing monetization to continue to provide those services over the life of the vehicle. So how do we reduce upfront costs for the OEMs and tier ones? And a good proxy for us to look to is what's happening in enterprise software, where companies like Salesforce have gone through a software as a service model, and so has the rest of the enterprise market. And we think that can be applied here as well, which will result in greatly reduced upfront costs for the OEM. And the cost then is moved over really to the IVI software supplier, who has to invest in that IVI platform ahead of time and bring a much more complete product to the OEMs and tier ones. How does the supplier then get compensated? They do that by a pay-as-you-grow model, where as the vehicles are shipped, the supplier is paid, and they recover their investment, that initial investment, over time as more and more vehicles are shipped. And then as our user base scales, as the OEM's user base scales, it opens up new monetization opportunities like in-car commerce, UBI, et cetera, which then allow the OEM to cover additional costs for providing those services over the life of the vehicle and generate profit. And also a benefit of this is that the consumer, instead of having to decide on that premium IVI upfront at time of purchase, they can subscribe to those premium services over the life of the vehicle as they choose to. And that further enhances the user satisfaction and delight, and also creates a stronger business case for the OEM in the form of recurring revenue streams. And we call this the IVI as a service model. And let's get into the details of what, as you bring this technology solution and this business model, what does that look like? So the first thing is the IVI as a service must do what normal IVI does. It must have all the domains like navigation, commerce, media, car controls, and productivity. It should be hybrid, so that when it's connected, it's cloud first. When it's not connected, it still falls back on the embedded system and can provide those same services. And it must have a customizable, easy to develop UI or HMI, so that you can always have up-to-date, fresh UX without changing the whole system, as I said earlier, and reflect the branding very quickly and easily for the OEM. Number two, it must pre-integrate core services like Cerence's voice assistant, media streaming services, content such as maps, POIs, and traffic, which usually in a typical IVI development cycle is a lot of source of frustration. And so this pre-integration of core services and content reduces the integration effort and provides fast time to market. It's really important to have some basic capabilities like logging and analytics built in, so that the data comes to the OEM, only to the OEM, and that enables the OEM to then have deep insights into their customers. And why is that important? It's important because only by understanding the consumer behavior can we then continually serve them better and bring new services to market. And then finally, the new service-oriented business model, which reduces upfront investment and has built-in monetization with content, commerce, promotions, and UBI, that creates, again, new revenue streams to not only pay for the ongoing service, but also generate profit for the OEMs. So in conclusion, moving from a traditional IVI model to IVI as a service can significantly reduce costs and deliver more innovation, ensuring both customers and consumers are delighted. Customers meaning OEMs are delighted. And with that conclusion, thank you, and I will pass it back to Haley.
Thank you so much, Sal. And now I would like to introduce our next poll. So as I get that up on your screen now, you will see our second poll is: how critical will voice assistants be going forward to drive the purchasing decision? We have 5 options there. We have not critical, somewhat critical, undecided, critical, or very critical. So please place your votes now. We're at around 40% voted, so please do check for the pop-up on your screen. We're going to give you all another 10 seconds. We're up to 65%, so keep voting. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fantastic. Well, I'm going to share those results on your screen now. Not sure if anybody has any comments there, Roger. There is 2 with the majority votes there. We see critical with 38% and somewhat critical with 32%.
Clearly, our respondents view a voice connection in the vehicle as critical, as essential, and I personally look at it as the search engine in the car, basically. So your car is a browser, and it's voice that will enable that experience. But I think Pratik will have some further thoughts on this subject.
Absolutely. Well, now we would like to introduce our next speaker, Pratik Kapoor, who is the CTO at Cerence. Pratik, over to you.
Thank you, Haley. Hello, everyone. Thank you for participating in the poll. Surely, voice is becoming a key attribute and part of the connected driving experience. As the poll results also showed, it's one of the attributes that is gaining more prominence and people are considering in the purchase decision. But I think it's one of the attributes towards providing a great, delightful user experience. And as the HMI layer expands, there are more attributes which will start playing a bigger role as well. So with that, let's talk a little bit about what that experience and how that is going to be made up and what it encompasses today. So as Sal talked about a completely configurable HMI, the key piece in the HMI is the interface, which connects the humans to the machine. People today communicate through various different modalities. It could be the touch, the gesture, the gaze, and of course the voice. And we further enhance these modalities through our emotions, facial expressions, and the variance in our voice. A configurable and a complete HMI, it understands all these modalities, all these different variances, and uses AI in a multimodal integral form, and then uses anywhere from the voice to the biometrics to gaze to gestures, and acts as a soul of the modern car. Next slide, please. So in a modern car, you have hundreds of different sensors providing vast amount of real-time information coming from the vehicle data, from the road conditions, from weather conditions. And then you have the user data, as Roger also mentioned. This includes your personal life on your phone, your apps, your preferences. And finally, your IoT now, which is connecting your home to these other devices out there. So this complex ecosystem, it consists of your knowledge graph, your home graph, and your personal preferences. Now, these AI and deep learning models can use all this data along with the neural networks and algorithms to real-time mimic the cognitive functions of human brain or human mind, and enable you to interact with the system in several different ways. And also at the same time enables the vehicles to respond and take action without human intervention. So this not only allows you to adjust, let's say, the temperature, but also respond to how much gas is left in the tank, or learn the individual driver's speech patterns over time. But it also enables you to safely and intuitively interact with the car. So that's not only just through voice, but through a true multimodal interactive mechanism. So doing AI in itself is not simple, but creating a delightful intuitive experience and bringing together the voice, the touch, the gestures, the emotions, the gaze, this adds a whole new layer of complexity. Now, on top of that, you add the support for various different languages and a moving vehicle. You're talking about an environment which is very complicated. You can have engine noise, you can have road noise, and various other elements. All these need to work together. All these need to be sorted out and parsed and cleansed and made to work together to create a great human-like experience. Next slide, please. So a next generation interactive AI solution not only simplifies the user experience, but also is environment, ecosystem, and your preferences aware. So not only it enables your personal life to fit seamlessly into the car or be extended seamlessly into the car, but it also creates a digital identity both inside and outside the car. So a true intelligent automotive HMI makes every interaction better. It has access to the third-party services, the external content services, and can interoperate with the voice assistants. It can fulfill the complex multi-intent natural language requests, all coming in totality together. Next slide, please. So as you connect the digital identity of the user to the car, now you have a very personalized user experience. It enables the HMI layer to interact using deep learning in a much more delightful fashion, as it now understands the user individual preferences and can not only personalize, let's say, the entertainment system, but can also execute these complex and contextual commands. So whether you're finding, let's say, a parking, or you want to play your favorite music, or simply find the cheapest gas around you, the AI-powered infotainment system can provide the best experience. So it will know which movie to play in the backseat of your car, or it knows what song do you like in your daily life based on your daily schedule. So basically, in all, now you can hear, understand, talk, and even think, and have the car do the same, thereby reducing the cognitive load on your brain, all while at the same time while driving. So if you look, next slide, please. So if you look at the connected car of the future, and Roger also mentioned that that number is increasing, and it's going to 75% or so of the shipped cars by 2027, the data becomes very important. Ford's CEO recently mentioned in an interview that data and connectivity now carries even more value than fuel in auto industry. So AI will enable experiences which are proactive and led by real-time events. And an IVI solution which can iterate at a much faster pace is available as a service, as Sal explained. It can create a unique experience which can be as close as interaction with another human being, and a true multi-sensory experience in which we have the voice, the eye movements, the gestures, the gaze. They can all be a part of the conversation to provide the best delightful experience. So with that, I'll pass it back to Haley.
Thank you so much. Well, now we're going to head into our last poll. So I'll bring that on the screen now. So our last poll is, how should a connected IVI be monetized? So very important questions. You'll see there's several options in front of you. We have monthly or annual subscription, included in the cost of the car, sponsored or paid for by advertising, pay per use, free with customer opt-in for data sharing, or don't know. So we're going to give you all another 10 seconds to answer the poll on your screens now. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fantastic. So I'm going to share those results with everybody now. For any comments, anything that you expected or anything that shocked you. Roger, are those expected results from yourself? Sorry, Roger, I think you're still self-muted.
Of course.
There we go.
You know, it's a sad tale to tell this far in competing with and coping with Tesla in the market, but they include it. It should be just included. Why am I paying for this? Actually, in these early days of creating these solutions, the value is greater for the automaker and the dealer than it is for me. The challenge is to deliver these rich solutions that make it more interesting to me as the consumer, to give me that personalized experience. So not those results are very much in line, I think, with what one would expect, because there are other approaches, there are other ways to go. Certainly, there are those who look at the data sharing proposition and believe that in the future, maybe the car itself would be free if it's generating enough value from the data that it's creating. Maybe that's a big maybe. We're working on achieving that value proposition, but we have quite a number of questions to get to here for our Q&A session. So, but before we do that, maybe Sal and Pratik have some thoughts on this question in particular. Sal, do you have some thoughts about how we make sure that connection in the car stays live and how we account for paying for this stuff?
Yeah, there is wisdom in the crowds, right? So I think what that poll was, even though again there was a clear, there was not a clear top, there was a top but not a clear leader in terms of the options, and it really it aligns with our thinking too, which is where it'll be a combination of a few things, because you can't burden the OEM with all the costs, you can't burden the consumer with all the costs, and certainly the costs are there. So it includes connectivity, all the content. So it really will be a 1, 2, 3 punch, and a combination of what we learned in the poll of some of the costs are sort of baked into the car upfront. Some of the costs are are paid for through other mechanisms like commerce and advertising, data sharing, and so on. And advertising doesn't mean pop-up ads. Our vision there is, I arrive at a Target, and as I'm arriving, my arrival screen says, hey, by the way, there is this coupon, and send to phone, and I walk in, now I can save money. So it's that kind of an experience where it's always helping the user, and you can do that and monetize at the same time. We have to protect the user from spam, if you will, by providing helpful content, which is also promotions.
And I can block those ads if I want to?
And you can block those and pay more.
Pratik, what are your thoughts? I mean, quite honestly, if car makers are making all this money from my data, I'd like a kickback, to be honest. But what are your thoughts on this question?
I think Saul mentioned it too well. I think obviously again this industry is just beginning to evolve, right? So we'll all see where it goes. But the monetization of the data and then the kickback that you said as an end user can come in various different forms. It doesn't have to be a true dollar that comes up in your bank account. It could be a discount on insurance, right? For example, through a usage-based insurance. It could be based on your driving habits, based on your driving patterns, and the AI, the machine learning in the IVI, as well as in the cars, can now further use that data along with the sensor data to bring in that aspect, right? So there's several different ways the monetization could come in. Again, as Sal mentioned, it could be ads, or it could be even a better experience with the ads. For example, if you're driving and you see a McDonald's ad, it doesn't have to be just a pop-up ad. It could be, hey, there is a special offer, and you typically go to a McDonald's drive-through, right? So it could be very specific to you, very targeted, which you typically do at a particular time in your day when you drive. So that's more where I see this going towards.
Okay, so let's dive in. We have quite a bit of questions from our listeners. So first of all, why should OEMs own the digital experience in the car? Why not just let Google run the show, or Amazon, or somebody like that? Why even try? Sal, you have some thoughts about this?
Yeah. So we've seen this movie before. We've seen this movie in mobile where you see the profits Apple generates by controlling the user experience, and you see what the rest of the market is doing. So there is very much a parallel here as well. The more insights and data, and that's what, again, it comes down to, that we as an industry give up, that we're not privy to, makes it such that we can't service the consumer needs going forward. The less we know, the less we can service. The more we know, the better we can service the needs of the consumer. And really, that's all that matters, is that deep relationship with the customer. So more than anything, that is for me, the number one reason why we as an industry need to continue to control that experience in the IVI. And secondly, just like the internet, when it came to computers, created a boom of new services and revenue opportunities. Then it came to mobile and created a number of opportunities. And just so as it comes to the car, the fourth screen, so it's TV, PC, mobile, and now the fourth screen, the head unit, the in-car experience, it will also bring those opportunities here as well. They won't be the same, just as they weren't the same for the mobile phone as they were for the internet. So there'll be new opportunities. And again, being in the driver's seat, being able to develop those and then monetize those will be very critical for future business models for the OEMs, which again, if you look at mobile, look at Apple moving more and more now towards services and recurring subscriptions. You see them launching all these packages of services. Same thing will happen again with vehicles. So that to enable that recurring subscription revenue, you have to have control over that fourth screen.
And Pratik, the role that voice is playing is evolving as we speak. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's been reading about Amazon Halo, which is going to be, I'm going to make a request, and then Amazon Halo is going to say, gee, you don't seem like you're in a good mood today. What's going on? So what is this proposition, from the standpoint of OEMs owning this digital experience from a voice perspective?
I think there's a couple of things over here, right? So when we talk from a voice assistant perspective, there are several ecosystems which are emerging, right? So there's obviously the Alexa, the Google, and there's obviously the Apple Siri, and they have become very much the ecosystems that the users might pick one or the other and go deeper with. When you as an OEM create a car, you want to expand and make it available so all those ecosystems, the users who are as a part of those ecosystems, can embrace that and still be able to have the best experience. So I think the way I see this all coming up together is a voice assistant in the car or an interactive assistant in the car, which can interoperate with all these different ecosystems together and can have them all coexist at the same time, is really where this is going to end up. by just picking up Apple Siri as a default or Alexa, you're going to alienate the people who have Google as their main ecosystem, right? Or who are using Google Home and all. So if you look at me, I have both Google Home and Alexa in my home, and I have Siri on my Apple phone, right? So I'm using all of them for different reasons. I, in fact, even use Cortana for my Teams and Microsoft or for my productivity side, right? So all those ecosystems I'm using for different purposes, and they're well built for that. I think when you come in the car as your personal life, the digital life comes into the car, you want some aspects of all of them to play in when you're in that the in-vehicle experience. And I feel all of them will have to coexist together.
So I'm hearing maybe from both of you that the role of the OEM is to play something, to be an orchestrator of all this content and user interfaces.
Well, the OEM has to definitely create that user experience, which can have all of those assistants to coexist. Whether they do it themselves or whether they partner with some of the companies like Telenav and Cerence to enable them to make that happen is obviously a different question. But yes, as OEMs understand and look at these ecosystems, the coexistence becomes very important.
So we had a question about autonomous driving and when that's going to happen. And well, this session isn't about autonomous driving, but it is in the landscape. And maybe the what's significant for this conversation or relevant is the onset of what we're calling industry level 2 or level 2+, where you have to have a driver monitor and you have sort of a combination of lane keeping and adaptive cruise control. But the fact that we're going to have that driver monitor in the car because of this evolution towards automated driving, how is that changing the development thinking around these systems? Sal, how are you looking to integrate safety systems and driver monitors and in-cabin cameras, et cetera?
Yeah, good question. So, semi-autonomous and autonomous both present a fantastic opportunity for users, as long as they're safe, again, to engage with content and so on in the car. If not the driver, certainly the passenger. So it'll allow more and more, especially the driver, to interact more with all this content and increase, again, the ability to monetize that and delight the user with that head unit sort of fourth screen experience. So very critical for these services to be into the future, to then make infotainment even more useful for the end consumer.
Well, I'm thinking two things. If you have a driver in-vehicle camera, that can contribute to the personalization. And if we're integrating safety systems, then you're talking about a augmented reality navigation kind of experience. Would you agree with that? I'm going to come to you, Pratik, because you referenced AR, but hold on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's that's where at least location services are going. Your first graphic that you had in your first slide, I think that's very much here in the near future. It's not too far out to be able to create those kind of experiences. At least again in your fourth screen. When we have these full windshield HUDs remains to be seen. Although there's some good progress being made there too. But that again really meshes that digital world with the real world and creates a much better experience and a much safer experience as well, because now you experience the real world and the digital world is now overlaid on it, and it's a lot safer to work with.
I'm even thinking of the vivid infotainment experience where the radio is becoming more of a visual than a radio dial proposition.
Mm-hmm. Everything becomes right in front of you, exactly.
Yeah. So Pratik, you mentioned AR. What are your thoughts about how, as we get into semi-autonomous, sort of assisted driving, how does that change what we're doing in the dashboard?
Well, I think the first of all on the driver monitoring, one thing that I want to mention on that is there's certain regulations that are being passed now, which is going to make the driver monitoring mandatory, right? The US is still on the table. Europe is also advancing that, and so is even China, right? So you'll see more and more of those coming up, and not only just in the level 2, just in the standard regular cars itself, like backup camera became a standard a couple of years ago, right? So there are use cases which will get evolved as a part of that, and those will obviously be expanded more as we move towards the autonomous driving in the future, right? Or even in the near future with the level 2 plus and 3 and all, right? And I think some of those use cases could be very simple as detecting the driver drowsiness when the driver is on the driver's seat, to even the occupant monitoring or basically your passenger monitoring if you are a Uber or a Lyft driver, so you don't need to have a separate dash cam sitting on your front glass of the screen, the windscreen. But then at the same time, also some safety use cases, as Sal said, where the location as well as the information both inside and outside the cabin can be combined together to produce the best use cases, right? Whether you're driving on a mountain, so based on the driver attentiveness in there, automatic or taking certain proactive actions, or turning on the traction control on the vehicle if the driver is not paying attention. So those are some of the use cases that will become very important as we move further into the autonomous landscape.
Well, I'm thinking also the driver monitor is going to help your system better recognize requests, speech requests.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So today, even with the voice, right, you could do emotional detection. You can see what state of mind the person is when the person is asking for, let's say, a certain set of directions. And today, the systems today can detect just by voice biometrics the state of the mind of the person. So if you are in an agitated mind or stressed out and you ask for a direction to some place, the voice assistants very quickly reply you directly to the point, the answer to your question, and move out, right? As opposed to when you're more even out, they can recommend probably a Starbucks or some other places on the way. And all these things come together through AI. Yep.
But I have a bone to pick with Alexa, but I'm going to take it up with you, and that is the smart speaker we have in our kitchen. My wife has been using it so much lately, it doesn't seem to recognize my voice anymore. But
right.
We won't go
so,
there.
Yeah, I think we'll get there. And voice biometrics is definitely gaining a lot of prominence. But when you combine that now with the in-cabin cameras and add the facial recognition on that, as you said, that combination together and the multimodality that I said shared in the slides, I think that's where the true AI gets all the data behind to make those effective decisions.
So Sal, are your systems?
Sorry to jump in, Roger. We've actually got some great audience questions that have just sprung up that we'd love to get onto, if that's okay. So
I have them right in front of me here, Haley.
Fantastic. We have one at 5:15 p.m. that I think the team would love to get some insights on.
Oh, you mean 12:15?
Yes, sorry. Apologies, I'm over in London at 12:15.
All right. So I know there was one on data ownership. Is that what you're talking about, or something else?
So we have one regarding the business models. Are these gaining traction with OEMs, or is this what needs to happen? So
my thought was, how are OEMs responding to the business model challenge here? You know, is the OEMs are your partners, your clients? How are they responding? What are we seeing? Is it just give them a few free years, or is are some of these car makers getting a little more creative?
So I can answer that, and maybe Sal, you could jump in. It goes beyond just the interactive assistant, right? I think the answer to this question goes back again to the data aspect, right? So the interest in the OEMs obviously is going towards or beyond than just providing a simple solution to the car and then just upgrading over time. It's also providing the best in class of experience over time, and then also taking that experience and the data behind to create more use cases over time through which they can monetize themselves, right? And I think that's the business model, which they're very interested in listening on how they can monetize that data, obviously anonymized in a secure fashion, GDPR compliance with PII compliance and all, but then how they can go and leverage that to build better products, but then at the same time, generate a new revenue streams for them. Sal, do you want to add something to that?
Yes. So, I would say the industry is obsessed with this, right? Of how do we address the business model challenge when the cost to deliver these services to develop and deliver are so high. And you've seen a lot of activity, across the globe, with, UBI and being able to, with opt-in, provide that data to your insurance company, and then the insurance company then pays the OEM. You've seen these commerce marketplaces that OEMs have rolled out, embryonic stage, but certainly there's potential there. So OEMs clearly are looking for new ways, and subscription services as well. So OEMs are clearly looking for ways to solve their business model problem while addressing the consumer need for these to be really included with the car, as Roger, you had said earlier. So there's a big challenge there because it's not cheap to build these services. So there has to be, again, a combination of things that come together, and you're starting to see that happen, where there's some subscription, some monetization of the screen, of the data, and so on, which then together brings a business model that works for the user and works for the OEM.
So what about, we do have a question from the audience about data ownership. Who owns the data? Now, the catechism in the industry, even coming from senior executives at OnStar over the years, has been the customer owns the data. But maybe the customer can't even get at the data, can't see the data, can't control the data. Where are we at in terms of who owns the data? For you, Sal.
Yeah, so I think it's fairly clear, and it's exactly and it's clear by regulation. It's not a choice necessarily. The data does belong to the user. The user, as they're signing up for these various services, opt in for certain uses of that data. Typically, when it comes to selling the data or providing it to third parties, there are very strict laws that are propping up everywhere, GDPR, CCPA here in California. And so, which includes the ability to see your data and delete your data. So all of these things that are happening, again, on the internet side of things and mobile internet side of things are and already are coming to automotive. So it's the user's data. They have control to get services. They have to opt in to sharing some of that data, again, just with the OEM and not outside the OEM. And then for additional benefits, they can choose to share outside.
I'm going to push you a little bit on this, and that is presumably if you're using an Android phone, Android's using your data to deliver you superior search results that are more relevant, presumably, to you. The car, we know automakers like GM are reselling anonymized data, but wouldn't it be more useful if car makers like BMW, who does the same thing, were creating value propositions in the car through their partners like yourself, like enhanced traffic information, for example? That's right in your sweet spot at Telenav, right? I mean, that doesn't seem to be happening quite yet, but maybe I'm crazy.
Yeah, that's where things are going. Again, it's the same model as the internet. You have to opt in, and you want a service, you opt in. When you opt in, you agree to sharing some data. Again, respecting privacy is very important. Once we break that trust, and the users are not willing to share their data, a lot of these services that we're talking about just don't happen, and we're back to square one where the customer is not delighted. So it is very important to make privacy paramount and make sure that make it clear this is the user's information. Even when it's anonymized, you have to opt in and say, I'm going to anonymize it and use it for traffic purposes, for example. That has to be clear. And I think the OEMs have done a better job, I would say, than the internet companies and just that ecosystem in being explicit about it. There are pros and cons to that. You don't get as much opt-ins, you don't get as much data. But I think as an auto industry, we are much more respectful of user data than the mobile internet and internet has been. And I think that is a strength, not a weakness.
So Pratik, you're processing large volumes of data coming from cars. You must have some thoughts about data hygiene.
Yeah, I think as Sal mentioned, it's the regulations which are already in place or being put in place, and that clearly state that the data belongs to the end user, and users need to opt in on what they want to share, right? But then there is also a certain aspect which is if there is not enough data, some of those use cases that we all talk about, the autonomous driving, the ADAS, the in-cabin monitoring, they require data to be trained. They require, those models need a lot of, whether that's synthetic data, which is a new thing that is obviously now getting a lot of traction, but then at the same time, real life data, which is also needed to get to the perfection, the accuracy, and less latency that we all want in these systems, right? So I think the where this is going towards, obviously, and as you mentioned, BMW and some of these European OEMs as well, I think they're all obviously moving in a direction where they want to use this data and provide back the services. This whole industry just moves at a very slow pace on its own because of the reason it takes 5 years to go build a car. So you'll see some of those next pieces in the SOPs which come out later in the years, right? And that's when you'll start seeing some of those services which will be much more data oriented. And as you said, as more and more cars get cloud connected, it's going to become imperative for the OEMs to provide those services. And that's we're already starting to see some of those design projects happen today.
We had a question about the portability of these sort of personalized platforms and personalized experiences. I want to have the same experience in a rental car or a shared car that I'm having in my own car. Sal, is that feasible? Is anybody doing that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if it's perhaps within a brand, let's say there are Ford vehicles, that you drive and you walk into, perhaps, that becomes a little easier now, even in the near term. Longer term, we need, again, as part of GDPR and so on, there's data portability, data sharing, and one could see sort of identity management being something that's centralized across the industry to some degree, where you can tap into that. But I think we're a little bit further away from that, but certainly it's feasible and even imagined in things like GDPR and where that's going.
Pratik, a portable, personalized.
I think we're starting to see a little bit early traction of that, or actually I would say seeds of that, with the profiles being created in the vehicle, as Sal mentioned as well, right? So once a profile is created, that profile is an object sitting in the cloud, which could have a relationship with one car or some other car, and that relationship could be created over time. So we're starting to see the seeds of that. And then you'll see more and more. In fact, when you said the voice being recognized at home, not in a right fashion, once you have trained the system with your voice, which you, in a car that you're using daily, and you go sit in a new car, that biometrics, that training, that your personalized training that has happened, you would want that training to be transferred over to the new car, so you can still get more better experience as opposed to starting from zero, right? And you'll see more and more of that coming up, and that's why we're starting to hear these terms of digital twin, right? In the cloud, where you're getting now a car object and a user object, and how they all have a relationship in the cloud together, and how they can be maintained and expanded over time with different either different driver profiles or user profiles, or different cars as you purchase or move from one to another.
I'd be interested in getting both of your perspectives on, we had a question about managing power consumption. Of course, there's also processing resources and storage resources. Maybe a quick thought on, focus on power consumption, but also with a thought to processing and storage requirements. Sal?
Yeah, I'm I have an EV. I don't think about power consumption on a regular basis. It's only when it's a long distance trip. So I don't know how big a problem that'll be for the general consumer, but certainly as more and more compute capability, as the compute capability increases in the vehicle, there is more power consumption, and more again will be done on the edge in the car. For privacy reasons, being one, connectivity is expensive too. So you'll see more and more power consumption in general. But given where we're going with EVs, for example, which is where that would be a main concern, For an everyday use case, it's not such a big deal with where things will go in terms of power consumption.
Prateek?
I think the compute could be on the edge or on the cloud, and I think as Sal mentioned, with the EVs, you definitely have more available on the edge as well. But you'll start to see, and we're seeing now with the cloud connected cars, where some of that compute could be offloaded into the cloud to make use of that neural network that you can easily set up on magnitude of servers and use virtualization and all that in the cloud. I think it's a combination of those two, which is evolving, where certain mission critical real-time events have to be done for split-second decisions on the edge, but for certain other events can be offloaded into the cloud, which are non-safety critical, for example, right? And it's going to be based on, it'll be dependent on very much the type of the action you're doing, and storage. I think obviously is one big aspect to that, and I think there's going to be a balance between what is at the edge versus in the cloud. We're seeing obviously, and you mentioned that as well. We're collecting a lot data assurance into the cloud, and we're dealing with this every day on what do we leave at the edge and what we bring into the cloud to ensure that one, there's redundancy of that data, but then at the same time, it's available at a much more faster pace as well, right? Again, it depends on the use case and the action, and that's how the decisions are being made.
I'll ask this question verbatim. What do you gentlemen need to run faster? What are the biggest roadblocks that you're running into? So, Sal, biggest roadblocks. What do you need to go faster?
Yeah, a phone on wheels would be great. So I think that's a good sort of target for us. The ability to.
Now, wait a minute. A phone. Come on. Cars got multiple processors, multiple networks, multiple operating systems. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe that is the problem. But again, I think it goes back to what we started with. The software-defined car would be a great start. Because that allows us then to be able to. The name of the game is delighting the user and the consumer, right? That's what it's about. And the software-defined car, as it happens, and it's happening, will allow us to do that more and more, because the software is eating the world. That includes the automotive industry and the vehicle. And so the faster we get eaten there, the faster we can delight the user and the faster we can move. So really, what's happening needs to happen faster.
Okay, biggest roadblocks, Prateek?
I think the biggest roadblock for the AI is always data, right? How fast we can get more data, and how better we can cleanse that data and make it and synthesize that data to get to where we want to be, right? One of the reasons why the autonomous driving, the level 4, level 5 is still looking so distant future is because we don't have enough data to process and learn from it and create the best AI models out there. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we face as a company every day, on how we can, one, get more and more of this data, and how we can better utilize that and get the most deduced value out of that data, so we can use it and further enhance our AI models.
Okay, Haley, I think we're at the end here.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Roger, Sal, and Prateek. We've had a lot of questions coming in, so really pleased that everybody has enjoyed today's discussion. And you can always follow up with the team or contact myself, and I can always put you in touch if you'd like to find out more. So with that, we will be ending today's discussion. Thank you all for attending, and thank you to our panelists. Goodbye all.